Today we are concluding chapter 4, and this is verses 13 through 14. So if you have your Bibles with you, I invite you to open up to James chapter 4, verses 13 through 17. I have titled this message, "What is your life?" What is your life? What's the meaning of your life? What's the purpose of your life? What is the scope of your life? What does your life mean? And how should you not only answer this question, what is your life, but how should you respond and how should you live in light of answering this question? James is going to approach this topic and this idea from the perspective of placing God first in our life. So really, I think the question I should ask you, aside from the title of this message, is God first in your life? Is He first? Is He the first thing that you think about when you get your paycheck? Is He the first thing that you prioritize when you're making vacation plans? Is He the priority when you think about getting a new job? Are you seeking Him? Are you consulting Him? Are you asking Him for wisdom and direction? Is He the first in every area of your life? Does He get priority? Well, what James is going to uncover for us is some points about what it looks like when you and I do not put God first, and then what it looks like when you and I do put God first. And so this is going to be a little bit scattered as far as grabbing these observations and these points out of here for you. However, let's read the text together first. James 4, starting in verse 13. "Come now, you who say, 'Today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit.' Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, 'If the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that.' As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin." Now, I do want to make one slight comment here. Verse 17 might seem a little bit out of place. You're like, whoa. Why all of a sudden he's talking about sin? I didn't see any of that in the beginning here. So I just want to point that out, that verse 17 might feel out of place. It might seem out of place, but in the context of what he's talking about here, it is going to make sense, and we'll reveal this as we go. So, is God first in your life? Is the question of the day. Is He first? If He isn't first, what does your life look like when God is either second or third or last in your life? I would argue that the great prophet Ricky Bobby was accurate in his comment, if you're not first, you're last. It's okay to laugh. If you're not old enough to get that reference, then, or maybe you're too Christian to get that reference. But if God isn't first, quite honestly, in a lot of ways, He will drift out of your life. Not that He's doing it, but you are. If He's not first, then God slips and slides, and eventually He becomes last, to the point of even potentially non-existent. So is God first? That is the question that you and I face when we read verses 13 through 17. If He is not, let's look at that first. if God is not first in your life today, or if God has not been first in your life in the past, or if God will not be first in your life in the future, James is going to address what this looks like, the way that you think and how you feel about your life, and the motivation that you have in living your life. What does that look like when God is not first? So he's going to address this for us. Firstly, I'm giving you the first 2 points actually first. The first 2 points. When you and I do not have God first in our life, number one, we make long-term concrete plans without consulting Him. And number two, we pursue building and accumulating wealth apart from Him. So in verse 13, James begins this passage and he says, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit." So what James is giving an example of, in light of this whole context of, is God first in your life? What he's showing us is when God is not, what we do is we'll say, you know what? Here's some plans that I have. Now, James is going to use, he's going to use business and he's going to use wealth building as an example, but we shouldn't limit the extent of what you and I will do in our heart and with our life to this realm only. But since James uses this example, we'll talk about it first. So James will say what happens when God takes a back seat, when God takes passenger seat, when God maybe isn't even in the vehicle with us. What happens is you and I, if we have enough motivation, if we have enough aspiration, if we have enough motive, we'll say, you know what? Here's what I want to do with my life. Here is the dream I have for my life, and here's exactly how I want to execute this dream. We develop these plans on, I'm going to go to school for this, and when I get out of school, I'm going to get that job, and then I'm going to be able to buy this house and that car, and I'm going to get that kind of a spouse. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to this specific city, and I'm going to do that thing, and here is where my life is going to go. Now, I also want to say, and I've said this before, especially here in the book of James, that having ambition is not wrong. Having ambition is not evil. If you have an ambition right now to maybe be a supervisor or have some kind of leadership role in the company that you work for, that's not bad or wrong ambition. That kind of ambition isn't bad or wrong. But what God warns us against is selfish-driven ambition. Because selfish-driven ambition will produce in us, or at least allow what's already inside of us to come out, characteristics of greed, of overt control, driving us to the point where we may even be okay with pushing other people out of the way or stepping on people in order to climb the ladder of success. So James here, what he's trying to get out for this example is, when God is not first in our life, we will make these plans. We'll make these concrete plans. We'll plan out a year from now specifically. He says a year from now. He's like, we're going to go here, and we are going to make money. And there's this nuance in this text of a sort of an arrogance, a dash of pride, that we're like, man, I have the skill, I have the knowledge, and even if you do, I have this skill, I have this knowledge, I can do this, I'm going to do this. And so there's this underflow, this undercurrent of, I can do this and I will do this, I am determined, I have the knowledge, the resources, the assets, I'm going to do this. And what happens then, alongside of that, is we develop this motive and this motivation to pursue these plans, and specifically with money, that we want to build and accumulate wealth. And we just want as much money as we can get as soon as possible. How can I do this thing? How can I set myself up for wealthful success? And what I would want to ask you, and what I think God would want to ask us within this mindset and within this framework of this pursuit of wealth, is I would want to ask you, why? Why do you want to be so rich? Now, in your mind and in your heart, you might be thinking, well, Travis, are you disconnected? Is your brain connected to your mouth right now? Why would I not want to be rich? Why would I not want more money? Why would I not want any of that? Because our world and the culture is pushing us and promoting us to get rich. And there's all the get rich quick ideas and the get rich, quite honestly, scams that are out there. And it's so alluring and tempting, and it captures even the smartest of us. So the world is saying, build wealth, accumulate things. Why? If you've ever felt that, maybe reflect on it, right? Maybe you feel that way now, or maybe you've felt that way in the past. Reflect on it and try to dig a little bit deeper under the surface. And what is the motive for that? What was the motive for you in desiring so much wealth and to accumulate all that stuff? Why? Do you need a bigger house? Maybe you do. I don't know where you live. Do you need a 5-room, 10-bathroom mansion on the hillside? Do you need that? Probably not. What is one of the driving factors and motivations for people to do this? Well, there's several, but at least one of them is this. They want people to see what they have and say, wow. They want admiration from others. They're looking for other people to say, well done, wow, you are awesome. That's what we look for. We look for the applause of other people. We look for the approval of others through the pursuit and the accumulation of wealth and things. Now, there are benefits to wealth. Having a lot of money gives you the freedom of time. It gives you the freedom of recreation. So there's benefits to having money. Money isn't evil. A lot of people and even a lot of Christians will say, money is evil. I mean, the Bible doesn't say that money is evil. Money says that what's that? Yes. Yeah. The love of money is the root of all evil. Just love it. I just want more. And here's the thing. Here's the thing with money. I don't know if you've experienced this yet or not. You want more money, and then you get more money. Okay, let's say you get a $2 raise, or if you're salaried, let's say you get like a $5,000 or $10,000 bump or something bigger. You get this raise, or you get that job and that promotion, and now you have more money. Or maybe you do pull tabs and whatever, and you hit a little bit of a jackpot. Now you accumulate this, or you get a tax return. And you're like, whoa! Or we get our PFD when it's like actually exciting of an amount, and so we get this little pad of money that comes in. Right? We get this, and then what? It's not enough. It's never enough. Having more money is never enough. The enemy who lives in this world, the enemy of your soul, his greed, his lust, his power, it's never ending. It's a thirst that can never be quenched. So God warns us about loving money. God warns us about having too much. And James here is pulling on that heartstring. James is appealing. Every single human wants more. We all do. I want to upgrade the parts in my PC right now. Even though I have a good running computer and it runs and it operates games and movies and all whatever I would need it to do, it does it. But man, it'd be cool to have a better graphics card. and an updated CPU. And man, if our house was a little bit bigger, yeah, sorry for those of you that aren't computer fans. But man, I mean, it'd be cool to have another car or a bigger vehicle. Man, it'd be cool to have a sauna or a hot tub in the yard, like something like it'd be so awesome. And then you get these things that you want, and you can be satisfied. And then, but here's the thing. Here's the warning. Not necessarily strictly in this, but just from the Word of God, from my heart, and kind of going off script here. But the more you desire, and then the more you acquire, it's never enough. And your mind is going to tell you, yeah, right, it'll be enough. All I want is fill in the blank. Travis, I'm not asking for $100 million check to show up in the mail. I'm just asking for a $10,000 check to show up. That'll be plenty until it runs out. And until it's gone, then what? Then you're left wanting. Then you're left needing. And all the while, who are you leaving out? God. The one who provides, the one who is your source, the one who is your sustenance, the one who gives you true, lasting, and fulfilling joy. Not the temporary happiness that money can give us. So James here is pulling on this heartstring, and he's saying, look, you're making these plans to go out and make all this money and build and accumulate all this wealth. And you have this in your mind. It's your drive. You're looking on YouTube for all these. How can I do a side job and build up all this money? How can I get there? And so we're doing all of this. And James is saying, look, here's what you're doing and here's why. Because God is not first in your life. So you're making these plans. You're not consulting Him. And we're going to find out like the not consulting Him in part is part of verse 17. And we're pursuing on building and accumulating wealth apart from Him. So James lays it out. And if you've noticed a theme, especially in the back half of this book, James comes out in each of these little passages, each of these little sections, he just comes out swinging. He's like, look, here's the problem. Here's the thing that you and I struggle with and wrestle with. And now he's touching the thing that like no one wants to touch and talk about as being harmful to us, and that's money. Man, money is attached to our heart. Directly attached. And if you're thinking, Travis, how is money attached to my heart? How is it attached to the seat of my emotions? Well, here's the thing. Give me all your money. How did that feel when I said that? Right now, just give all your money to me. Now, don't clip this, okay? If you're those of you watching online, don't clip that. A pastor saying, give me all your money. We don't want to do that. We don't want to just give someone all of our money. Why? Because there's value in that money, and that value then is also attached to our heart. And it's hard to let it go, especially if it's not necessarily a place we want our money to go to, right? Paying bills, right? Paying taxes. We love doing that, right? We love, okay, IRS, you want my money? You can just take it all. I don't even want it. Okay, I spent a lot of time here. We've camped out. I didn't mean to camp. All right, we're going to pack up camp and we'll move on. Number 3. So number 3 thing in how you can notice and spot when God is not first in your life. James says then in verse 16, okay, in the context of accumulating wealth or the desire to do it, the desire to pursue money and wealth in and of itself, he says, as it is, you boast in your arrogance. Now there's a little bit more context from the previous 2 verses, which we'll touch on shortly here. But what James is addressing here then in verse 16 is he's addressing point number 3, that you and I, we will brag about our plans and we will brag about our successes because we're looking for the admiration of others. Now, It's good to celebrate when good things happen in your life. You get a raise, you get that promotion, you get that other job that you've been working so hard to get. Celebrate it and be happy about it. But check your heart, check your motivation in the pursuit of that and in the celebration of that, because that's what God is looking at. And that's what James is talking about here. He's saying, oh, you're making plans to go build all this wealth, and let's say you do. Now you're bragging about it. Now you're boasting about it. Look what I did. Look what I've built. Look at my house. Look at my cars. I got a cabin. I've got a cabin in Kenai. I've got a cabin up by Denali. I've got a wilderness retreat I can go to. I've got a seaplane. I can fly wherever I want. I got all this stuff. Look at this. I built all of this. This business. Look at I built up this business, this corporation. And we'll brag about it. Why do we brag about things in general? Because we want people to look at us and think, wow, she's successful. Wow, he's really done something with his life. And the reason why you and I will do this, the reason why you and I will brag about stuff like this in order to get the admiration from other people is because inside of us, whether we've verbalized it or not, you and I are insecure about how we feel about who we are. We feel like we're not good enough. We feel like we're not liked or loved the way that we deserve or want to be liked or loved by other people, maybe by a specific person. And so what we do is, instead of facing that and dealing with that insecurity and that hurt and maybe that pain, is we try to build a life to get those kinds of people to say, wow, maybe you are good enough. Maybe you are not the person I thought that you were. And so we live in such a way that we want to try to prove people wrong. So we brag. Man, here's my plans. I'm gonna go and be this. And I'm going to go and do this. And then we succeed at it. And then you're like, wow, see, I told you, look at this. I worked so hard to do this. And then people start applauding us, and it feeds our arrogance. And mind you, this is all separated from consulting God. This is pride at work in our life. Look what I've done. I've done all of this. We give no acknowledgement to God. We give no thanks to God. We give no credit to God because we've done all of this. And so then what happens is we begin to trust more in the things that we have done in the life that we've created for ourselves. We have no need for God. We have no need to trust Him. We have no need to go to Him. We have no need to rely on Him. Even if we have all the things that we wanted to get, our life can still be miserable, and we can have hidden things that are going on that no one knows about, and it can be causing us so much stress and anxiety and maybe even depression, but we can't let anyone know because look at all of our stuff, and they won't think that we're successful. They won't think we're good. They won't think we're strong if they really knew how messed up I was inside. But we'll boast and say, look at this, the outside stuff. Isn't this awesome? Isn't this fulfilling? And people might think, wow, man, they have an amazing life. I couldn't imagine having that life. They must just be so happy. So boasting in our arrogance, bragging about these things is what we'll do. Even if it's not big, grand, like big houses and cars and whatever. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a title or a position. It can be smaller things. So what I want to say is just be careful. Be careful with what you want and what you have plans for. And Proverbs chapter 27, verse 1 says, do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day might bring. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day might bring. So first of all, that proverb is saying, one, don't boast about tomorrow. Don't be bragging about what's going to happen tomorrow. Because you have no idea if your plan is going to succeed or not. You have no idea if you're even going to have a tomorrow. None of us in this room, none of us watching online, we're not promised or guaranteed life tomorrow. We're not promised a minute from now or an hour from now. We have no idea the length or the extent of our life. And then fourthly, it gets more encouraging. Fourthly then, James is going to point out to us that we ignore God along this whole path, along this whole trajectory of our life. When God is not first, we ignore God. Verse 17, so whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. What James is talking about here in verse 17, connected to verses 13 through 16, is he's saying this. When God is not first, we go and pursue our own life, and we have these grand ideas of becoming wealthy and building this life that we can be proud of, that we can brag about to other people, that other people can applaud us for, and they can look at us and say, oh, they're good, they're successful, they have a good and happy life. So we do those things, and we don't have a proper perspective of time, of life, or of God himself, which we'll talk about those three things here next. But we do all that. So James says all of that, and then he says in verse 17, whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, to him it is sin. Why is he saying this? Because what he's trying to say is we ignore God along that whole track of life. And what he is talking about when he's talking about doing the right thing and not doing it, what he's saying is this. Along that whole path, as you're pursuing this vision, pursuing these dreams, pursuing these goals, you hear God whispering to you. You feel conviction from the Holy Spirit saying, hold on a second, don't do this. Don't make that business decision. Don't get into that relationship. Don't spend the money on this thing. Don't move to that place. You hear him saying this to you, and you ignore it. And you make that decision anyways. Why? Because the decision you're making is for your preferred future, and if you say no to what God is telling you to say no to, your preferred future will not happen. So that's the arrogance James is talking about. That's the pride he's referring to. And that's why he's saying here, if you know the right thing to do and you don't do it, that is sin to you. That's disobedience to God. God is speaking to you, maybe not with words audibly, but he's speaking to you with intuition. He's speaking to you through thoughts in your own mind, and he's warning you, don't do this particular thing. Don't go that direction. Don't have this relationship. And you ignore all of it. Because it doesn't fit with where you want to go. It doesn't fit with what you want to happen. And you're living in sin because of it. You will lose whatever shred of integrity that maybe you used to have. That's gone. The way you handle money, you don't do it with integrity. You'll lie, you'll cheat, you'll steal. In order to gain what you think you need to gain. You'll become more greedy and more selfish. You'll do anything you have to in order to accomplish these dreams. All the while knowing and feeling that it is wrong, yet you continue on. James says this is what life looks like when God is not first. You're chasing after something that will never be caught. Even when you catch it and you think you've caught it, it continues to run away and evade you. And that's the temptation within it. We pursue this temporary glory of self-made success, hoping that it'll give us a lifetime of happiness and admiration, and what it ends up doing is we actually end up ignoring eternal life and we exchange it for that temporary glory. And what ends up happening is we receive temporary happiness. But what we exchange that for is eternal glory. We walk ourselves away from God the more we ignore Him in pursuit of everything that we want for our own life. So, now that James is done being mean to you, he's got some positive things in here to say as well. Some encouragements, if you will. So what does life look like then when God is first? When God is the priority, when God is the apple of your eye, so to speak? Well, firstly, and in James 4:14, you will have a proper perspective of time. In verse 14, the first part of verse 14, he says, you do not know what tomorrow will bring. So he says, you have plans. I'm going to move to such and such a town. We're going to make a bunch of money, and then we'll move on from there. And he says, yet, so you make these plans for your life, and yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. How many of you know how many salmon will be in Seward tomorrow? Does anyone know for sure? There's salmon there right now. The salmon are starting to come in. I don't know if you're aware or not. If you fish, then you're very aware that people are starting to catch them. But they could be all gone tomorrow. A trawler can come through and scoop them all up. And you can make these plans. I'm going fishing tomorrow. It's Memorial Day. I got the day off. I'm going fishing. I'm going to limit out. 11 p.m., wait a couple hours, limit out again, and I'm coming home with 12 salmon. You make these plans. And go for it. Do it. Make those plans. But what James is saying, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. All these plans that you have no idea. Especially in context here, if you have financial plans, investment plans, wealth building plans, you have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. The market could crash. The market could spike and be amazing. Your health could dwindle. You could get in a car accident and be in the hospital. You could have a heart attack. All these things, all these different things could happen. You have no idea. And so James, what he's encouraging us and letting us know is when you know God and when God is first in your life, you will have a proper perspective of time. You will not think more about tomorrow than you are thinking about today. James is saying, time for you view it through the perspective of not only how God sees time, but you live in the moment of today. You live for today. And there's several places in Scripture that talk about living for today, not worrying about tomorrow. Jesus addresses this in Matthew. And talking about anxiety, Jesus says, worry about today because tomorrow has enough worry for itself. And what is a kind of a basic definition of anxiety? When we worry about stuff that we can't control, and that is usually future reference. We're worrying about something tomorrow or next week, the appointment we have on Wednesday, or the meeting with our boss we're supposed to have on Tuesday, or whatever it is. We worry about the future, something we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know any of it, but we worry about it, and it produces anxiety in us for today. But Jesus says, don't do that. Just you have enough worry for today. Don't add on to the worry by thinking about worry for tomorrow. But you have a proper perspective of time when you place God first. Secondly, and related, in the same verse of 14, secondly, you will have a proper perspective on life itself. Not only of time, but also of your life. James continues in verse 14, and he asks that question, which is the title of today's message. What is your life? What is your life? He says, you don't know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you, so he answers this in sort of an illustration, a visual, if you will. He says, you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. So he's referring here to fog in the morning. Now, we don't always get that here in Anchorage. But when we do, like if you drive down the Turnagain Arm especially, we get a lot of fog and mist there, right? That tends to burn a lot slower than normal fog does. But just imagine in the morning there's fog and a mist. And what do we kind of usually say or think about at least when we have, whether it's a light fog or a heavy fog? Well, man, I can't wait for the sun to come up a little bit more and burn this fog away. Because light and heat will cause that to dissipate and vanish. So James is saying your life is just like that. It's like a fog. You're here for one moment, and then you're gone. And most people will not think of you. Most people will not remember you. Now think about this. 1 or 2 generations prior to you. Like maybe think about your grandpa if you knew him, or your grandma if you knew her. Did you know her parents? Do you know anything about their parents? Do you know anything about your grandparents? Do you know anything about your parents? 1 to 3 generations, if you weren't around them, or if other family members aren't talking about them all the time, you know nothing about, you may know things about where they lived, where they went to school, the kind of job they had, right? You may know that sort of, but their personalities, do you know their personalities? What did they stand for? What kind of virtues and values did they have in life? Our lives are but just a mist. We're here for such a short amount of time. And when God is first in our life, we will think about these things. Now, this doesn't have to be depressing. That can sound like, well, Travis, life then has no meaning. Why should I, if I'm here for such a short time, and if my life is considered in such a way where people won't even remember me 1 to 3 generations from now, why does any of this even matter? Well, that's not a God perspective way to look at it, but a God's perspective on life in this manner is this: live for today. A fog is only here for today. That's the illustration and message that James is trying to get across, that the Holy Spirit is trying to get across when you and I read this in 2025. Is live for today. A fog isn't guaranteed for tomorrow. It's guaranteed for today. So why is that important? Why is James using this illustration? Well, 1, because the Old Testament does as well. Psalms uses this same phrasing. Your life is like a mist that appears and then vanishes. It provides meaning because every day should be important. Every day should be the most important day that you're living, because you're not guaranteed a tomorrow. And because of that, because your life is so short, your death is unknown. And in light of eternity, when God is first in your life, this ought to give you joy, hope, and maybe more importantly, purpose for today. Your life is important. It can influence and impact other people. And if there's a phone call you've been meaning to have, a conversation that you've been wanting to have with someone, a decision that you've been wanting to make, do it. Because you don't know what tomorrow will bring. And when you have God first, when you're seeking Him and asking Him, and when you come to learn and know and understand His will, and you live accordingly, you will live with hope, you'll live with purpose, you'll live with joy. And you'll understand that you have such a short amount of time and that you need to take advantage of the time that you have. Time is one of the things that you can never get back. You can make a bad purchase, okay? You can go and purchase that TV on the PFD sale, or that mattress that everyone advertises is on sale for the PFD sale. You can go buy that and you can have some buyer's remorse, but you can return it and get your money back. Time is the one thing that you can't get back. How you spend it and what you do with it is lived moment to moment. So then number 3, James says, when God is first in your life, you'll have a proper perspective of Him. You'll have a proper perspective of God. You'll have a proper perspective of time. You'll have a proper perspective on life. And you'll have a proper perspective of God. In verse 15, James says, instead of you making plans for your life, not knowing what tomorrow will bring you, and understanding that your life is frail and your death date is unknown to you, and you don't know what tomorrow brings, and your life is temporary, James says, in light of that, the attitude that you and I ought to have is this in verse 15, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. Now, James isn't suggesting that you use these words necessarily verbatim. Maybe this does need to become a prayer for your life, even if it's just for today. But this communicates more to the motivation, the attitude, and the mindset that you and I have about life, about time, and about God, and placing Him first. And that is, the heart and the attitude is this: God, whatever you will. God, whatever your desire is, whatever your plans are for my life. The Bible tells us that God makes plans for our life. That he told Jeremiah in the book of Jeremiah, before you were born, while you were conceived in your mother's womb, I wrote in a book the plans that I have for your life. I have a preferred future for you where good things happen. Bad things will happen, but I'll make good out of them. I have these plans for you, Jeremiah. But the only way for you and I to live out and experience those plans that God has for our life is if God is first. If we go to Him first, if we talk to Him first, if we lay down our own dreams and our own desires and our own plans, we set those aside and say, God, what do you want for my life? Tell me, show me, speak to me, reveal this to me. If you do this, if God is first, you'll have a better and more proper perspective of Him. And a result of these things will be that you will live in joyful and humble surrender to Him. You'll find it exciting and thrilling to say no to your own self in favor of saying yes to Him. You'll say, you know what? I had some fun plans. I had some ideas of making so much money or having a certain house or getting that boat or whatever it is. These seem fun and whatever. But God, if you have something different for me, if you have poverty for me, I can't wait. God, if poverty is my direction in life instead of this, I'll take it. I'll have it. And we'll do it with true joy and with humility. We'll surrender to Him. If you seek, you'll have a proper perspective of God when you have a proper perspective of God. When you seek Him first, then you make plans. You seek Him first, then you make decisions. You discover, in that process, you will discover and know what God's will is. And what His will is refers to like His heart and His desire and the plans He has for you. You'll discover these plans. You'll discover His heart and His desire for you. And when you do that, then you will live within the scope of the plans that He has for you. You'll not want to veer off from those things. You will find humility and joy in the midst of whatever He has for you for today. You won't be mad about where you're at today, whether it's with lack of money or with excess overflowing amounts of money. The Apostle Paul, talking about all the adventures he went on throughout the world of the Mediterranean, all the countries he went to start brand new churches. He said, you know what? I've experienced great gain. I've had lots of money, lots of clothes, lots of food. And he says, I've also experienced loss and extreme poverty. I've gone hungry for several days. I've experienced shipwreck. He was on a ship bringing him from the eastern side of the Mediterranean to the northern side of the Mediterranean. The ship, due to a storm, sunk, and he was floating on a piece of wood out in the middle of the Mediterranean during a storm, and had to wait till he floated into shore. He's like, I've experienced all these things. I've been beat. I've been imprisoned. I've been whipped. I've been punished in all these ways, and I've experienced all this awesome stuff, and all through it all, it's all the same to me. He says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can endure all this stuff because of God. So when you have a proper perspective, when God is first in your life, you have all these things. You have a proper perspective on your life, that it is meaningful and full of purpose, and it's full of purpose and meaning because of how short it is. If this entire stage, let's say from corner to corner of this stage, was the entire timeline of the world, creation of the world to when God is going to destroy it, our lives are they are much thinner than the width of one of my fingers if I were to lay it down here and you're to view it. Matter of fact, you probably wouldn't be able to walk up onto this stage with a pen or a pencil and mark for me where you're at on this timeline. Now, that can give you hopelessness, or what God's intention for that perspective is driven to do is to show you this, that your life is important today, right now. If you don't feel like it is, don't believe that lie. It's important for today. And so if we have that perspective, we can live for purpose, we can live on purpose. And God is saying, live for today. Don't be living for tomorrow. One of my I consider this both a strength and a weakness, but it's probably more of a weakness in a lot of applications. But one of the things that I do a lot is I think about the future constantly. I'm always thinking about tomorrow. I'm always thinking about next week, especially as it relates to church. I'm like a year or 2 years out in my mind thinking about Legacy Church. There's a colleague, a pastoral colleague of mine, that pastors a church in Raleigh, North Carolina. He admits to this same thing as well, and he's probably way worse at it than I am. But he says he's so much geared towards future thinking that he said oftentimes in the middle of him preaching a sermon on Sunday, he's already thinking about a point or two for his sermon next Sunday. He says it's bad. So I get it. It's hard to live for just today, especially if you're a planner, especially if you're a strategizer. You're always thinking about what's next, what's coming up tomorrow, the next week, and all that sort of stuff. But here's the thing. God wants you to live for today. And it's important to do this. I want to read 2 other scriptures with you before we close. Jesus is going to address a similar topic to this. Our pursuit of wealth, our pursuit of money, our pursuit to kind of build up and accumulate some kind of a life for ourselves apart from considering who He is and apart from considering the uncertainty of the length of our amount of time to live on this planet. Jesus addresses this topic in Luke chapter 12. We're going to start in verse 13 and go through verse 21. But the first section I want to read because it's the setup for what Jesus wants to teach through a parable. In verse 13, Jesus starts off, again, Luke chapter 12, starting in verse 13. Someone in the crowd, so there's a crowd around and Jesus is there teaching. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Now, an inheritance is usually given to the firstborn son in any family, so this is a younger brother, likely, saying, "Jesus, tell him to split his inheritance with me." So first of all, that you shouldn't even be asking for that, but this is what's happening. Jesus, in verse 14, it says, "But Jesus said to him, 'Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?' And he, Jesus, said to them, to the crowd, 'Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness.'" He's calling out the brother's greed and desire to have what is not his. But he's calling it out to the crowd. How embarrassing for this guy. But good for him. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Possessions mean nothing to Jesus. They might mean something to you. They might mean something to me. But to Jesus, they mean nothing. Then, motivated by this idea and this concept about what Jesus just said, he's going to share with them a parable. A parable in the first century was a form of communication where someone would tell a story, and within that story, there was meaning that was both obvious and also hidden. But it's a great way of communication to tell you a story because it's very visual and it's easy to remember stories when people tell them to you. So for example, now I'm not going to take any offense to this, okay, because I forget my own. How many things do you remember about what I've said about maybe stories about my life or someone else's life versus how many things you can remember from the actual sermons that I've preached and things that I've said in a sermon? It's most likely that you've remembered stories that I've shared than about actual points in a sermon that I have said. Why is that? I'm not offended by that because it happens to me. We all have the same molecular structure in our brains. Our brains are geared and wired to remember stories. So Jesus and other teachers in the first century, they would use stories in order to teach because they're memorable and they're impactful. So Jesus then, in verse 16, tells them a parable. And he says then in verse 16, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully." Get this imagery. There's a rich man. He owns land, and they're producing crops on it, and it's plentiful. He's a big, rich farmer. Now, if you're from Alaska, you know that's out here farming, you're like, what's a big farm? I don't know. We don't have big farms in Alaska. He's got a big fishing fleet. He's got a lot of boats. They're out in the Bering Sea and doing all that stuff. So the land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, "What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops." What an amazing problem to have as a farmer. You have so much food that you can't store it anywhere because your storehouses are all full. It's an amazing problem. And he said in verse 18, "I will do this. I'll tear down my barns and build larger ones." Smart guy. "And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul," and I want to pause here for a second. You're probably reading on. And he says, "I will say to my soul." Why is he talking to his soul? Because he has all this stuff, and everyone's looking at him, and they're saying, "Wow, what a farmer. That guy's awesome." Maybe he's boasting about all of this stuff. "I've got all this stuff. Look at me." And he has some insecurities about his own value and his own worth. So he tries to find value and worth in the value of the things that he has. So he's going to talk to his soul. And he says, "Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Congratulations. You did it, buddy. You have arrived. You are a top-tier human being. Relax, eat, drink, be merry." You have your whole life ahead of you. No more financial worries. You have all the food you need, all the drink you need, all the friends you need, all the money you need to do whatever you want for the rest of your life. Buy that yacht and just sleep on it all day long. That's what we dream of, right? Buy that house out in the woods where we can't see our neighbors and no one will bother us. We have all these dreams, right? Relax. You have arrived, sir. Verse 20. But God said to him, "Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?" So, Jesus says, is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. What happens here? What's this? God says to him, what's he talking about? Your soul is required of you. You're going to die tonight. And all this stuff you have, all these new barns and all the grain and all this food that you have stored up that you thought this is my big nest egg. I'm going to live off the residuals of this for the rest of my life. God is now saying, guess what? You're dying tonight. What was that worth? Was it worth it to you? Because now someone else is going to have all your stuff when you die. Was it worth it? And the application Jesus gives is this. You built up all this stuff and it's worthless. And he says, don't build all this stuff up for yourself. If anything, if your pursuit to be wealthy, your pursuit to acquire, if anything motivates you to do that, it ought to be so that you can be rich towards God, so that you can give to fund missionaries, to be able to supply them to be obedient to God, to go reach a people that you can't reach with the good news of Jesus. It should go to supporting people who are less fortunate than you, that live around you. It should go to help people who are homeless and in poverty, for those who are sick and can't pay their bills. It should go to churches who are providing a safe place for people to know Him and to grow in their faith. It should go to being charitable and to supporting those who are doing God's will.